Okay, hello there everyone, and welcome to today's University Business Web Seminar. It's great to have you all with us. My name is Kurt Eisler. I'm the Web Seminar Editor here at UB, and I'll be your moderator. The title of our event, as you see here, is Student Success in the Era of COVID-19, and is being brought to you through the generous support of our sponsor for today, Okta. First off, as members of our audience are still coming in here, a little bit of background about our topic for today, what we'll be discussing: managing student life cycles, maintaining engagement and retention, and supporting student success were already complex tasks prior to COVID-19. But today, with the disruptions caused by the pandemic and the sudden shift to a wide variety of in-person and online learning models, promoting and even defining student success has become even more challenging. Today we're joined by enrollment leaders from Fairleigh Dickinson University and Ivy Tech Community College for a presentation and discussion about the evolving field of student success, the impact of COVID-19, and some strategies for the future when it comes to student engagement and retention. We're looking forward to an interesting presentation and discussion here, plus live Q&A. We do welcome your questions, so do stay tuned. We're going to get started in just a minute or two here. First off, though, just some quick housekeeping. First item, as it says here, if you need technical support at any time, you can use the chat panel located at the right side of your screen there. Just select the name of our event host and producer, Jason York, and type your message there. Let him know if you're having any technical issues. He'll be able to help you out there. Also, second item, if you have any trouble listening through your computer speakers at any time, we'll also post the phone number and access code in that chat panel at the right side of your screen there. You can use those to get audio access over the phone if you need it at any time, if that's better for you. Also, third item here, as I said earlier, we welcome your questions. Please feel free to use the Q&A. You should see at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen there. Just make sure it's set to all panelists. And feel free to ask a question at any time as we're going here. We'll get to as many as we can at the end of the webinar. So once again, if you have any questions for our panelists, feel free to just fire away, type it in that Q&A, bottom right-hand corner there, and we'll get to those at the end. Also, we're commonly asked about accessing the presentation at a later time, either the slides or the recording. And yes, as you can see at the last item here, we'll be making the presentation available for everyone later on. You'll get a follow-up email with links to the slides as well as the recording. We're recording here, and you'll be able to access that later on. So if you want to go back over it, or if you want to share with anyone on your team at your institution, you'll be able to do that later on, so don't worry about that. Okay. Also, just a quick note about our presenters here and their presentations. Student success, of course, is a pretty big topic, all-encompassing topic, and the impacts of COVID-19 are also pretty wide-ranging across higher ed. So what we've done, we've asked our speakers here to present in basically a three-part play: the past, the present, and the future when it comes to student success at their institutions. The past being some trends over the past several years with student success and enrollment, retention, and how that's played out at their institutions. The present, of course, being the impact of COVID-19 and how that's affected them. And then the future being, where do we go from here, and where do we see this playing out as we go forward. So you'll see that reflected in their presentations: the past, the present, and the future. So to introduce our speakers here quickly, we're very fortunate to have with us Luke Schultheiss is Vice President for Enrollment Planning and Effectiveness at Fairleigh Dickinson University. We're also joined by John Laws. He's Vice Chancellor of Student Success at Ivy Tech Community College Lafayette campus. And we're also joined by Kevin Bresser. He's Director of Higher Education at Okta, and he'll say a few words after Luke and John. So this is a great panel. We're very excited about it and glad to have them with us. John is going to start us off here, and then we'll hear from Luke. So with that, I'll turn it over to him. John, it's great to have you with us.
Well, thank you. Thanks for the housekeeping and helping make sure our participants can be sure to enjoy the entire presentation and then share it with colleagues as appropriate. As mentioned, I'm at the Lafayette campus, but one of the key indicators here for you to take away is Ivy Tech Community College is very unique in the fact that we serve the entire state of Indiana. And so you'll see over here how campuses all around the state, and literally, unlike some of the systems that are out there for community colleges, Ivy Tech is accredited as one institution. And so it presents some great opportunities, but also some unique challenges that we can get into as appropriate. But again, for today's presentation, I'm at the Lafayette campus, but we'll incorporate things statewide because we're one college and we try to be consistent throughout the college. We were founded in 1963, so a little bit late in terms of community colleges, but we started as a vocational technical school, and then it was not until much later that the community college mission was established, and we came to our current situation. Tuition, about $4,300 for full-time students now, or translates to just under $150 per credit hour, and we have better than 2/3 of our students that are part-time, so that per credit hour certainly comes into play as opposed to the often used formula of full-time status and one tuition rate. You'll see there on that bullet point that vast majority of our students are also Pell eligible. And so we pride ourselves on being the gateway to higher education for all students, but certainly we tend to attract folks that are lesser means or minority students and others, and we embrace that concept and celebrate it as part of our mission. In the past, we were growing various campuses and throughout the state, we were growing, and we really serve two major components for the state and the state of higher education in Indiana. We serve as an economic engine as we continue to have our vocational technical roots and help people get into the workforce in a hurry. And so everything from those health professions and automotive and welding and programs like that. We get them in with technical certificates or actual associate's degrees, and then out into the workforce in a hurry to help the state of Indiana be as strong as it is. But equally important is the continuing education to help students prepare to go on to further their education at one of our four-year partners. And we have the entire offerings throughout the state for four-year partners, but then we have lots of students that would also transfer to other locations. Although, given the nature of our campus, a vast majority of our students are bound by not just staying in the state, but in our service area, which we define as counties. We divide up the state for our various campuses, and many of our students never leave there because they're already working, very engrossed in the current community, and so they're demonstrating their interest in higher education to further their skills, get those job promotions, whatnot, but they're not necessarily going on to four-year institutions elsewhere or even to move for jobs in other states. Prior to the virus that's before us now, we had ventured into online education like many institutions, and we had gotten to the point of about 30% of our classes online. You'll see later just how we have really flipped that and are much more involved now. Our success, we of course are very concerned about the success of students, and we define it very much in line with the way our Commission on Higher Ed, who in the state of Indiana, who governs us, sees it, as well as the federal government. Those graduation rates and retention rates are what drives us. We talk sometimes about students being successful when they pass a class or when they get a certificate or some other credential, and how they can get a promotion and that sort of thing. And that's philosophically good, but we get paid by credentials earned. And so truly that is a benchmark for our success. Very few out-of-state students. As I mentioned, we're basically the state of Indiana, and we divide up our campuses by our counties. And so very few out-of-state students, unless they're coming to a four-year partner and starting with us and then continuing on with them. As I mentioned, the student success is mentioned and very much geared towards our technical certificates, associate degrees, and we're measured in that normal 100% and 150% benchmark. So in our case, the 2 years and 3-year graduation rates. When the virus hit, we changed on a dime, like many of you folks did in so many institutions. And we introduced a concept this fall of different delivery methods. You'll see a chart here to help us keep them separate. Basically, there are variations of the traditional in-person classroom, the traditional online experience, and what we define as virtual, which is a given time and place. You must be via computer, but it's still not face-to-face. And then the other aspects here are blended models of that. And so we offer the students truly a variety of options. One of the interesting option is considered a Learn Anywhere model, where literally from week to week this fall, students can change how they are learning with us. And so they may start off on a face-to-face basis, and then because of life happening, they may need to go virtual, and then after that family member issue is taken care of, or their work schedule stabilizes again, or what have you, they may change their mind and come back. And so the name of the game is flexibility and helping meet the students where they are with their needs. One of the other aspects that has come up is that truly we have needed to get to know our students on a much more personal basis than ever before. And that's harder than ever because of the virtual nature and online presence. But it's also very important so that we can communicate and meet the needs of the students and keep them engaged. And so we started off with a special web page talking about college policies and procedures and what we were doing to keep people safe. And then it expanded to so much more. And so truly the old concept of communication is key is being lived every day at Ivy Tech as we try to make sure that we are informing students and listening to the students as we engage them. Other major difference that we have seen is we've reduced density on campus. Not only are we doing all the things that CDC and the state of Indiana request in terms of safety, but we not only are cleaning and doing things like that, but we are also reducing the density. So we've got fewer people on campus, not just students, but faculty and staff. If the faculty can teach from their home, they are, so they don't have to come into campus and worry about social distancing and all that. That works fine as necessary, but every time they come in the building, they're touching things and doing things, and so there's more to clean and more possibility. And so what we've actually done is split the campus into various teams. That some will come to campus on Mondays and Fridays, some on Tuesdays, Thursdays, some Monday, Wednesday, Friday. There just depends on the department and the needs to continue serving students, but at the same time, reduce that density. And so what we have found is that we were able to expand our services. We have kept all of our offices open and the campus is open for prospective students as well as current students, but we have also expanded to the virtual services many nights up until 10 o'clock at night, and we've seen students really enjoy that possibility and have utilized that quite a bit. We also have seen that the students have been hit by various levels of the pandemic. The students hardest hit in the state of Indiana, as well as throughout the country, I believe, are those in hospitality, restaurants, and the face-to-face businesses, retail, and things like that. And so we've worked very hard to reach out and help those people skill up so that when this is over, and assuming it will be at some point, that they will have greater skills so that they can move up or move over to other types of care and employment. The child care issue has hit us hard too, and especially because of the school districts. Many of our students, over 60% of our students, have dependents, children as well as some adult care. But the child care has been a real interest because school districts were trying to figure out whether to go virtual and online or face-to-face or what they were doing, and then that was changing and they were not making decisions, or they were changing those decisions. And we saw that our students were, rightly so, concerned about what their children were doing first, and then they were thinking about their needs for continuing their education. And so we continued to see enrollment very late into the, right before the semester started. Ivy Tech does have 8-week sessions as well as the traditional 16-week semesters. And so many of those students have consciously decided to go to 8-week sessions to give themselves a little bit more flexibility. One of the things that I learned as we were reaching out to students and helping them with their needs, partly with COVID money that we received and partly with donations to the college from generous donors, was that we unintentionally started creating a bias. And I say that not at all proud about it, but we because we have such a high number of students that are part-time, what we were doing was providing resources to the people that were full-time and then scaling them back tremendously for the part-time students. And then the light bulb went off, and I said, you know, there's fairness, but there's also the reality of if somebody is part-time, that doesn't necessarily mean they should get less support. And so there's a very delicate balance there in terms of how we're using our resources and assisting our students and not penalizing those people that may still be employed or may be dealing with child care issues and stuff, and continue to help them, support them to continue their education. We are blessed that we have many resources on campus, from tutoring services to financial assistance to many others, but we can't do it all. And so even before all this started, but certainly after the current state, we firmed up partnerships with community resources. And so we are happy to make referrals to students and connect them with experts and nonprofits in the area that can help as well or better than we can. One specific that I wanted to mention, if you're not familiar with it, is an organization called Aunt Bertha. Strange name, admittedly, but Aunt Bertha is a nonprofit nationwide organization that helps connect people with resources. They screen these resources to ensure that they're not going to prey on people and that they are legitimate. They help identify the fee schedule and sliding fees or free resources and whatnot. And Aunt Bertha has been a blessing to Ivy Tech and our students. And so we have actually partnered with them by branding it under the Ivy Tech name and beyond our firewall. But it is also a free service that anybody can go to without branding at auntbertha.com. And I would encourage you to check that out. I do not get paid commission or anything like that. It's just a good resource, so check them out as you want to. Finally, probably no surprise to any of you, many of our students did not have the technology, the computers, or even the hotspots or internet connections. And so thanks to many donors around the state of Indiana, Ivy Tech has been able to provide some upgrades in the technology area so that we could help engage these students and keep them going rather than shut them out from their higher education opportunities. And so that's where this next heading comes into play. If you have not worked with your foundation or others to help find resources for students, I would encourage you to do so. You can have an application process and set it up however you want, but it is very good to be able to assist students and keep them engaged towards their education. We also looked at some of the scholarships that we had and actually were able to reduce some of the restrictions on them. In some cases, the scholarships were going to students that were full-time. And with the scenario here, we were able to go back to the donor and explain the situation and relax those. And we got creative in some other ways as well. And one of the keys to doing all this when you're working with the donors is certainly share the stories of the students. And so as you are visiting with people, get them to the students, get them to write a thank you, get them to share their information well enough that you can pass it on to others, protecting their identity, admittedly, but nothing is more powerful than a student saying, "You helped me, I don't know what I would have done without this support." The area of student life and the overall engagement of our students has been critical to keep them successful this fall. And we did a great job, I dare say, last spring as we pivoted because of the changing atmosphere. We've reached out to students. We've had secretaries, department chairs, faculty, administrators all calling students to just check in with them and ask them how they're doing. We've given the callers various resource pages so that when a student says, "I don't know what to do, I need this," we have a resource sheet that we can either share with the student, we can refer to Aunt Bertha, we can connect people that way, and this has proved very successful as our students have felt like we care, because we do, but sometimes they didn't realize it. And so this engagement has been very beneficial, as well as the Student Life program that went virtual. and have done all kinds of entertainment events and scavenger hunts and other things like that online in a way that students are able to still stay connected and be a part of Ivy Tech, and then ultimately going to be more successful. Finally, a few years ago, Ivy Tech started the 4DX work. And if you know anything about 4DX, it talks big about WIGs, the wildly important goals, and leading indicators. And we have pivoted those things to help complement all our other efforts. And so weekly, we have report outs of the various folks at department level and higher up to talk about how they've engaged students, how they've recruited students, how they've reached out towards our enrollment goals and our engagement goals and so much more. Next, I just want to point out some of the more obvious. You've got to plan for the unexpected. We did not anticipate some of the things that were coming, and every day it seems we have new challenges, but the Learn Anywhere model has proven very beneficial, although a lot of that credit has to go to both the students and the instructors, very little to the administration, but it's faculty working with students to help them stay engaged in their coursework and be successful. We switched from that old traditional model of you've got to come in and have a proctor in the testing center watch you take a test. We've gone to the online, and things have worked well. And so the only hiccup that is significant in any of this is that pesky internet that doesn't work out in our rural areas at times. And so we continue to fight that and try to work with hotspots and with the students to get that reliable internet and computer access. Now on this slide, I kind of said the present plus because we're on the cusp of doing this, so I can't really say we're engaged here too much, but more recently we started looking more significantly at the student life cycle management. And basically this is that holistic approach to taking the student from before they're a student all the way past their successful completion and into alum status. And so a few years ago, Ivy Tech started looking at what we could do, and we've gone to a product called Salesforce for this constituent relationship management, or CRM as we're calling it. And we will put prospects in the front end, and we will build that student record and all the associated support all the way through, and have lots of people having access to that. And so we think this is the wave of the future, and we're just starting to get there now. And so it's truly transforming the college as we get more people engaged in the various aspects and the accountability of touching base with students, putting their notes in, and that sort of thing. So we think that this will work, and you can see we've developed a vision statement and some guiding principles towards this effort. We've branded it as we do everything. It seems is Ivy something. So we've got the Ivy Connect for this project. The future, the big CRM, definitely. We believe that we have got to improve the quality and the speed by which we do prior learning credit assessment. Many of our students, whether they're coming back from military service or they've been out in the workforce, they've got some great skills and experiences, and we need to improve on how we can look at those, see if they meet course objectives, and give them credit as appropriate. I've hit the internet expansion a few times and how we need to continue doing that. The next item is increasing collaboration between our non-credit side and the credit side of the college. We do a lot of workforce training opportunities for local employers. They're relatively short and quick training opportunities, but those are, in essence, courses. If we take a look at how we do the academic side, and so as we're looking at increasing the lifelong learning of people, we want to increase this crosswalk discussion and give them credit for those things into a credit program, which will provide them the opportunity to earn a credential or even a degree. And then certainly we never have enough money to do what we would like to do to assist students. And so there are some increased opportunities for donors as we get creative and go from there. Finally, some takeaways and advice for the audience. We had a lot of questions when we started going virtual, and so dependent on the online is, okay, I need a computer, what should I get? And we were not prepared for that. We just would say, well, go out and buy something. And quite frankly, a lot of students went out and bought Chromebooks. Chromebooks do not work well with the Ivy Tech systems that we have. And so everybody was disappointed with that. And so we quickly realized we had to provide better guidance to the students and not necessarily give them specific brand or manufacturer, but certainly help them in this area. We quickly realized also that we take for granted how to do things, how to log into a webinar, how to sign up for things, how to apply for a loan for financial aid, how to do other things. And so we are now working hard to develop a more robust library of videos to complement the written instructions that we have. I mentioned Aunt Bertha a few times. I would suggest you go check them out to see if that might be a resource that would be helpful to your audience. Again, it's nationwide, so all you do is put in a zip code and take it from there. More and more things are going electronic, and we have put DocuSign as one of our vendors on steroids as we have been turning more and more things over so that we don't PDF and then send it to somebody to print out, sign, and PDF back to somebody else and that sort of thing. So that's where we're headed in the future, and at the end of the presentation today, we'll entertain any questions you have, but it's my pleasure now to turn it over to Luke.
Thanks so much, John. That was really great. I'm Luke Schulteis with Fairleigh Dickinson University, and I'll walk you through about 7 slides, going through the same format that John did with Ivy. Over at Fairleigh Dickinson, just some quick background. We've been around for nearly 8 decades, 2 campuses in northern New Jersey, with an additional one in British Columbia, and a primarily study abroad site over in the UK. We're the largest private university in the state, and we've had really great success the last 3 years in increasing our standing in especially the U.S. News and World Report, based upon a lot of the work that I'm going to talk about today. Looking at the past, we had about 2.5, 3 years ago, gotten excited to partner with a firm to provide for us a platform for delivering online graduate programs. It's a good thing we did, and we realized that area of expertise didn't lie within the institution, and through that partnership, we have been able to develop a number of programs and grown those enrollments pretty significantly. Not, of course, having any foresight into what was going to go on in the world, but that was a big thing for us at that time. We were also really focused on expanding our geographic enrollment profile, so target marketing to some specific states, based on a number of different factors. But that was a particular interest to us. and you can imagine that's something that's kind of dried up a little bit right now as so many are deciding to stay close to home for the obvious reasons. But that was important to us. How many more states, how many more students from out of state, just for the sake of diversity, as we charge, in-state and out-of-state students the same tuition. There was also a lot of focus on reversing a decline we'd had in international student enrollments. So we had taken some real significant measures in some specifically targeted regions to open up offices, or not offices per se, recruiting centers maybe, really coalescing a number of agents working together in some areas to really expand our profile, work with alumni from those different countries, and really hope to grow enrollments from a few countries specifically. We had, going back just a few years ago on one of our two campuses in New Jersey, we had a housing issue. We had more students who desired housing than we had beds available, and that was concerning. And, a big thing that we measured success on was, bringing people from out of state, bringing in international students, providing housing for the students, and kind of doubling down on what we could do to try to grow that. And then we also prided ourselves quite a bit on the broad array of academic programs we had. And they hadn't necessarily been so tightly aligned between the two campuses. And so it was important for us over the last year to kind of bring those together and then get the campuses aligned with each other more than they were. Things we really based success on were, how many bodies are coming to open house events, and just looking at the life cycle here a little bit, how many applications we're getting on a certain day, and we'd have mapped out, as probably all of you do, how many you need per week, and how many you need to chisel down through that funnel. The numbers of transfers, expanding transfers at your local feeder markets, how many deposits and housing reservations you're bringing in. Really big one for the current students was how many people showed up to an event. And needless to say, I know many of us suffer from not aligning that so tightly with maybe an extracurricular curriculum, if you will. But we pride ourselves on bringing lots of students out to lots of events. Boy, oh boy, we have a lot of events. And then, of course, finally, one that hasn't gone away, but I think will be changing as well. The first and second year retention was a great predictor initially, but we had certainly a lagging 4- and 6-year graduation rate, and working on improving that, and we have improved that. But those were the areas that had been the focus in the past. Where are we today? Everyone's off campus. So our course offerings are being offered remotely for the most part. Just a few clinical, lab courses we've got on campus. Very, very few. We've got students who are working remotely, student workers. Students are studying remotely, and our staff, almost all of them, are working remotely. We do have a few hundred students now living on our two New Jersey campuses. They are studying remotely and will be participating in very limited extracurricular activities in person, but a lot of it's going to be in that virtual format I'll talk about in a little bit. Our support services, for the most part, are all offered remotely. But as John had mentioned, we've certainly seen some improvements in service because of this. And a lot of that's because we had to force ourselves. So the old model may have been, you've got, a really big room with a really long hallway outside of it, and you got really long lines, and that's just how you work through the crowd, right? And people would show up because we told them where to go, and they'd get served in one office, and it's a potential that they may have needed to go to another office and wait in another line, and who knows how many hours this took out of people's days. The new format, which we adopted, as probably most of you have, is everything's done remotely. We've onboarded an appointment setting functionality that is really cool, whereby students can choose what type of transactions they need to conduct. And it can be multiple transactions for a specific office, and then they can set up an appointment with the respective office to provide them service. And they can do all this from the comfort of wherever they are, and we don't need to ask them to come onto campus or to run home to get documents, and they bring in the wrong one and all that type of thing. So it's really become a much more personalized, student-friendly service. And as John mentioned, our hours have, we've been able to expand hours, and this is nice because it gets to quality of life as well for some of the staff. So what we've been, essentially, we've cut down. We're New Jersey, so we've got traffic. So it's not unheard of to have someone travel well over an hour in each direction to get to the office. And now that people don't need to do that, and they don't need to, have such a rigid schedule whereby they have problems, maybe getting the kids over here, over there, whatever it is, we can work with the staff to have much more customized schedules, and that allows us to, open earlier, stay by later, work during the weekends and things like this. And again, it's really been a great service and something I don't see ever going away. And in essence, these are things that higher ed has been slow to adopt. While we have all conducted business with, you think of the company you work with, you need to deal with to pay a bill or buy something, you can do it all online. So I haven't really been able to do that. This has forced us to, which is great. We've also, it's enabled us to develop a one-stop model on our campuses, which we hadn't had before. In a limited fashion, we've only got a couple of people working there, and the idea is there will probably always be some students who want to deliver a document in person, so we're able to offer that, but we've realized we need much less of a footprint. We don't need to bring in huge numbers of people to our offices to do things that can be done somewhere else without paper. So that's a really interesting dynamic. And extracurricularly, we have adopted a virtual format as well, I'll talk about in a little bit, whereby students can participate in things outside of that Zoom function. We have undergone pretty extensive faculty training. As all of you, faculty were great. They were able to pivot in the spring, and suddenly Zoom became the thing. But we realized that was just a stopgap. So our faculty had undergone workshops through the summer, different platforms, different modes of delivery, able to bring in different dynamics so that it's much more than just a bunch of squares looking at each other and being talked at. The awareness of health and safety and how communication is received has been examined really significantly. This is not a bad thing. If you think about how we've behaved in a physical manner over the years, it really does make sense to do many of the things that we're doing now and make us much more aware of our surroundings, which is a positive moving forward. How communication is received has really been critical for us because I think we've relied as an industry too much on sort of passive information sharing. Maybe a student will see a bulletin up on the board. Maybe they'll see an email or something like that. They'll be able to pop into an office and ask someone a question. That's all gone right now. So we've taken really very deliberate steps in mapping out procedures so that everyone can refer to them. And this helps not just the student, but it helps the staff and faculty as well, because, you can imagine a student may have a question about, let's say, a bill, and it could be a natural thing because someone may not know if they're not in the bursar office, that's not a financial aid function, right? So people would get bounced all over the institution with the best of intentions, of course. But the way we've now revamped our communication, things are much more clear. We take a lot of effort to really make sure there's no ambiguity in the language so that students can really get from A to B in a seamless and easy to see fashion. And I think that's going to help up with our speed of transactions and getting things done quite a bit. I mentioned earlier a new tool for appointments. We brought in a new communication platform as well, where we can post notes and things like that. We've got different modalities for teaching. One of our schools is looking at a platform which kind of outlines the physical space so that all of the participants in a group can have an office, if you will, with office background and sort of office amenities, can signal when they're available to speak, when they're not, and it brings in a different context for people so that it's much more human, it's much more kind of businessy, if you will. It's kind of cool, and it's much more exciting than, again, just having kind of the Hollywood Squares model of being stuck in a room with a certain number of people for a set time. Extracurricular activities, we have partnered as an R&D with a firm that is developed for us and will enhance for us a product in which students can essentially find organizations with which they would like to become either a member or just kind of peek their head in and see what it's all about. But this is neat. If you could imagine, for example, you thought you might be interested in the chess club, but you weren't sure. In the old day, last year, you'd have to come and sit in a chess club meeting and probably play chess. In this one, there's a little bit of voyeurism, so you can come in and check it out, try it on for size, bounce around. As students get to help manage this, it's a really, really cool, dynamic platform where students can set up different meeting times, different activities, and it's all there for them in a neat, flashy, kind of cool, easy to understand way. The same firm we worked with, and I think that the lesson here is look outside of the box, if you will. So this was a firm that had done certain things for higher education, and we came to them and said, hey, this is what we need. Can you do it? And they were agile enough to say, yeah, tell us what you need. And we stood up a virtual admitted student platform in just a number of weeks. And this included the opportunity for students to look at videos, receive a welcome message from the president, to enter a number of different Zoom sessions with faculty so they could talk with the different departments, to speak with the athletic directors, various coaches. It was a really cool thing. And they're also developing for us now virtual tours and virtual open house events. And, looking back a year ago when we look at how many people came to open house, there was always an excuse for why it wasn't, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but why it wasn't, 3 students better than it was last year. Well, because, these other 15 colleges in the region had it on the same Saturday or the same Sunday. And it was so taxing on the campus to be able to get faculty, coaches, the facilities, everything for that one day that you do one in the fall and one in the spring. Well, heck, now we can do them every month. And it provides an opportunity for people to pop in and pop out and not take their whole day off, or, it's decided between us or another school. So we're going to get a lot more visibility this way. And as I mentioned earlier, expanding hours. Moving forward, things that are important for us is really developing a strong class of affinity. What we're doing is we've got to speed up the time to graduation now, and some things that we're doing aside from the class of affinity. We're going to have an extended winter term because we're closing down our fall term, right before Thanksgiving. And the new students don't know better, so we're going to bank on that, especially with them, is you go to fall, you go to winter, you go to spring, you go to summer. And I'm going to say that our graduation rates are going to drop, the time to graduation is going to drop significantly, and the rate of graduation is going to go up because we're just really being smart about this now. You've been going through the same modality. You can keep doing it even when we return to in-person. You'll be used to it. If you need to do online, you can do that. We're going to be sensitive to our pricing during those terms. So this is a really, I think, a game changer. There's engagement activities I just talked about. You've got to have things, utilize new platforms so it's cooler than just Zoom sessions with a chess club. That sounds terrible. Much more tight collaboration among the campuses and the units, and it has to be that way. And I think this is an opportunity for us to reinvent things. As I've said to my colleagues, who gets to invent a university? We do. This is a really cool time to be able to look at what is critical to our mission, and let's enhance that. Let's focus on that. And if it's not critical, that's something that we really probably don't need to be worrying about much more anymore. Career Services is going to be an office that we are working with really closely. They do a great job. But there's no more career fairs as we knew them. There aren't employers coming in to interview folk. So we're going to be working on developing more soft skills for students, engaging with them in a different manner. The alumni need to know what we're doing. As John had mentioned, giving is really important, and alumni want to know how we're helping the students from their alma mater. So engaging them is critical to helping mentor the students as well as to increase giving. Senior administration communication to students, much more critical now than ever. So we're getting a lot more messages out from senior leadership, the president. People want to hear what's going on. Families want to know. So that's been a critical area for us. and a lot more information, as I said earlier, on how to do things. Final slide here is we're doing this, but looking ahead, condense, collaborate, centralize. We can't be everything to everyone anymore. Focus on your core mission, focus on your footprint, what's important. Look at your people's staff duties and job descriptions. We've been changing those already. We've got people that are going to work from home forever. Expand their training so they can do more things and do them in different ways, and use their heads to think about and engage students on what's the best way to develop this service. We're looking at how to develop instruction for those in different time zones, since our international market dried up, as you can imagine, and continuing to develop new student platforms and implementing those. As I mentioned some really cool ones earlier that I'm really excited about. And following this, if any of you wanted to be tuned in with any of our vendors, just send me an email at luke@fdu.edu, and I'd be happy to speak with you then. So I wanted to leave some time, Kurt, for Kevin.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much, Luke and John. And now I'll just turn it over to our guest here, Kevin Bressers, Director of Higher Ed at Okta, to give us a few words here before we get to the Q&A. So, Kevin.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And thanks, Luke. Thanks, John. When we heard that you were going to participate in the webinar, super excited. And I love webinars where I do most of the listening and not talking. So I certainly appreciate all your thoughts, and it plays well. Just the finishing thoughts that I had on this. And just as a brief introduction, again, as the Director of Higher Education at Okta, we focus primarily around access management, which I'll describe a bit. And then also, as such, we talk with a lot of the IT teams. But I spent my whole career working my way around campus. So I've worked in a career services office. So I'd love to hear your comments on that, Luke and John. I've worked also for businesses that helped connect financial aid and the advancement operations to build on scholarship opportunities. So I definitely understand that importance that you laid out there, John, about thank you letters and donor relations and the impact of that. And now I get to kind of see it from more of the identity perspective of how all those different people start to come together and how to reduce the friction and really enable them to get into the different systems that they need to access. So really briefly, I'm sure there's a lot of folks on the line that have no idea who Okta is, or maybe even how to pronounce Okta. But we provide an independent or neutral identity as a service platform. And what that essentially means is we're that layer above, when John talked about Salesforce being the CRM, we're that layer above all the different systems that campuses are enabling right now to be able to perform these things remotely. But the whole point of that layer that we wrap around all of these different systems is to make it easy for someone to come in, become engaged with those different online services. And then also we really look at security as a really important element to that as well. You can get into a lot of other details. There's a lot of cost efficiencies that go into that. I did a webinar earlier this summer with Seton Hall University, and they said they saved about $1 million in staff time over the last 3 or 4 years through some of the components that we were able to add, and also being able to reduce licensing for different systems that everybody's rapidly purchasing now. But again, we're that independent layer around it to maybe to ease that friction. And I guess that's the main thing that the main thought I wanted to drop on today's conversation, because I think traditionally, pre-COVID especially, but even going back several years, when a lot of campuses were thinking about identity and access management, what they really associated that with was about how do students and staff and faculty and maybe some others like contractors or other researchers, how do they effectively log into our systems, right? What is the ID, password, and how do they log in through a portal? And maybe we'll talk about multi-factor authentication as part of that. But the conversation has largely been, what's termed in the industry more of a workforce type of discussion. And clearly that's important, as everybody was scrambling, and you did very well, scrambling to become online, to get online with so many more of these resources. How do you get these students into the place where they need to be, easily access it from their new Chromebooks or their iPads or whatever they can get in it with? How do you enable this? But what we're seeing is identity starting to be seen as something much bigger for colleges and universities. And when you look at the overall operations of the campus, and you almost start to think of it somewhat in some regards as, business operations around the advancement and the foundations functions and all of the other people that engage with the campus that'll never be a student, never be a staff or a faculty. How do you start to bring them into your ecosystem of all of these different systems and easily allow them to start to, engage with you? And I'm really, really big on, the donor side of this as well. When you look at the proliferation of crowdfunding campaigns, and someone posted in the chat about them starting up an emergency fund to help students. Well, again, those aren't major gift donors, right? They're people out there that want to help you, that want to become engaged. But right now, if you follow or look and walk a mile in their shoes, they may have to create accounts here and there and there, and they don't really connect very well. So if you look at, again, donors, huge opportunity for campuses to really start to think of them as your customers in some way, or even those events. And now with athletics under so much pressure right now, looking at how to keep those other supporters engaged with the institution, identity can really start to create that full scope around all the different people that are part of the institution, not just students and staff and faculty. So that's where we're heading with it as well. That's where we're talking with a lot of campuses. And the other part is that security element to it. And especially now with donors, there's been some cases, unfortunately, recent cases where the systems that to help with that type of processing may come under attack. And there have been some breaches of donor information. So to help institutions, build that trust with the donor community and with others, I think, looking at identity as part of that security stack is really, really critical. And what identity does is it pulls in signals from a lot of different places to identify, is this really the person that's coming in? Is there something that doesn't smell right about this session that they're coming in? What are the different systems that you have that might be able to give us some more signals to whether or not this is a trusted session? And if not, be able to further challenge to say, through proof of MFA or through proof of device registration of some sorts, being able to decide, is this really a trusted session? So security has been really driving, fortunately, unfortunately, it's been driving a lot of our conversations recently, especially as you look beyond just the traditional student, staff, and faculty. But again, I just want to take 2 minutes or a couple minutes, but appreciate that opportunity and look forward to listening in on the questions here.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Kevin. Thanks for being with us. It's great to have you. And yeah, we just have a few minutes left here. We're getting a lot of great questions from the audience. Thanks to everybody who's submitting your questions. Just a couple quick reminders, just to put it in the Q&A, the bottom right-hand corner there, not the chat. We're getting some in the chat. If you wouldn't mind just putting them in the Q&A there. Let's see, a couple questions for you early on. John, in your presentation, a couple detailed questions. I think you differentiated between blended traditional and blended online. Somebody asked, what's the difference between those?
Basically, the difference is just frequency on campus. The blended traditional being the key there, blended traditional is more than 50% in the classroom physically on campus, whereas the blended online is less than 50%. We basically say a third to half the time is on campus. The rest is virtual.
Okay, great. And another one for you, John. Actually, a couple people asked. You mentioned you're able to provide more services virtually online, including until 10 p.m. in some cases. Some people asked, that kind of piqued some interest, asking what services are you providing until 10 p.m.?
Academic advising is big time into that. We've staggered the staff, not just having some come to campus and some stay remote at home serving, but we've staggered their hours. So some folks don't even come to work till 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening and then work later into the evening. We've done the same with some student life events. And then done a little bit in some other areas like financial aid and others, but the big one that we've really been successful with is academic advising.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Luke, a couple questions. You had some great examples there. You talked about developing a platform for a virtual open house and extracurricular activities. Several questions asking here, basically just asking, was that custom developed, those platforms, or were those existing platforms? How did that work?
Sure, thanks. The firm with which we're working, again, I'll be happy to share that if you email me individually, Luke at FDU. They were spun off of existing platforms. So the firm with which we worked had a platform built to do certain things, and when we explained to them what we needed to be done, they were able to customize that. And essentially, it's scalable. At this point, they can roll that out to other institutions. And it provides us a tremendous opportunity to really even personalize it on a student level, so that if we know a student is coming in interested in a specific major, we can customize a number of the activities that student's going to take part into that major.
Okay, interesting. Great, thank you. Let's see, maybe we're at the top of the hour here, but maybe a couple others. Somebody asked, how have you handled mental health concerns for students and employees during this time? Is that something either of you have addressed? I don't know if John or Luke, you have thoughts on that? Anything new that you're having to do, or virtually or online during this time, some of the mental health concerns?
Unfortunately, at Ivy Tech, very few of our campuses have mental health clinics or even health clinics of any type. And so most of what we do is referrals into the community. And so we've had to really strongly work on those relationships with those providers so we can make solid referrals, and those referrals can get a little higher on the list of appointments than just if it's a cold call from the student. We have also gone to tremendous lengths to get more people engaged in suicide awareness and prevention training, so that even though we're not experts, that we are the eyes and ears and might be truly the one that could save a life. And the specific program is QPR. It is not intended to be expert, but rather know the warning signs and get the person to expert care.
Sure. Luke, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah. We've got telemedicine for students and staff. In partnership with our healthcare provider, they've been contacted by them, and they're offering additional resources as well. So it's more hours, more people, and different modalities.
Sure. Yeah, a lot of adjustment is one of the themes here. Finding new ways to serve our students. So great. Well, we've reached the top of the hour here. I just want to be respectful of everybody's time. If you didn't get your question answered, I know we couldn't get to everybody here. We will gather all the questions afterwards. And again, our speaker has been so kind as to provide their contact info in the slides. So keep an eye out for that link to the slides if you have further questions for them. So on behalf of University Business, once again, I'd like to thank our speakers for today, John and Luke and Kevin. Thank you all so much for being with us here today, and thank you again to our sponsor, Okta, for their generous support of our webinar presentation. And of course, to all of you in the audience, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you found today's webinar informative and useful to you. Producing events like this one is just part of our mission here at UB to inform college and university leaders like you about the latest news and trends in higher ed management. You'll find more coverage about issues such as the ones we discussed here in the pages of our print magazine, as well as our digital edition and website, through additional web seminars like this one, and through our various e-newsletters, which you can sign up for free right on our website. And as I mentioned before, for those of you who would like to share this event with your colleagues, or if you want to go back over the content at your own pace, we will be posting the recording at the URL on your screen here, and everyone will also be receiving a follow-up email with links to the slides and a link to where you can see the recording. So keep an eye out for that, and you'll have the opportunity to go back over it. Okay, so that is it for today's event. Once again, I'm Kurt Isley-Durley for all of us here at University Business. Thank you so much for joining us today. Goodbye, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day and have a great fall semester. Thank you so much.